In this episode, I'll begin my review and reaction to the newest installment of the Knives Out series, Wake Up Dead Man. Just came out in the end of 2025. So let's get into my thoughts, reactions, and review on Wake Up Dead Man. As I mentioned off the top, Wake Up Dead Man is the newest and the third installment in the Knives Out series, and I'm okay if they want to make 10 of these things. I think these have all been pretty solid movies. We'll get into which ones I think are better. Rian Johnson at the helm once again, and I low-key don't realize how many Rian Johnson movies I've seen where he did Looper. We've done a review of that on the channel. We don't need to talk about Star Wars: The Last Jedi, Glass Onion, the second Knives Out movie, and the first Knives Out movie, which was a good one. He also is doing 3 episodes of Breaking Bad. So Rian Johnson has quite a resume. He's probably not top five in my opinion, and probably not even top 10. But it catches up to you, seeing all these Rian Johnson movies. Anyways, I thought that this was the second best of the series. I think the first one for me is the best so far, and maybe that's just because I watched it in theaters of the Knives Out movies, and that theater was a great experience. I always say that there's a boosted score when you watch a movie in theaters, and I know this movie was available in theaters and in select theaters. It was one of those weird Netflix theater splits where I ended up just watching this on Netflix, obviously recently, so did not get to see this one in theaters, and I think Glass Onion was only a digital release. So maybe they should bring these back to theaters, but I mean, this movie was pretty solid, and I gotta say, I like how they switch up the format each time, and the only consistent thing is Daniel Craig. Benoit Blanc obviously brings a classic element to each of the movies. He's the only stable point of the series, really, which makes it great to contrast and compare between, we have a house, and I forget where the house was in the first movie, in this like ruralish town, and then you have the kind of beach aspect in the second one, and now we're in a church in the middle of nowhere. So I like all those different setting changes. I think that's a good idea to keep that. This kind of, I think Knives Out kind of gives the same vibe as White Lotus. There's maybe a couple consistent characters, one consistent character in this case, switch up the location, make it just as interesting. I thought this was another solid one. I will say there were parts of the mystery aspect to it that I thought were a little bit far fetched. I think the plot is a little bit far fetched just in nature, which makes sense. Where in 2025, when this movie came out, in 2026 now, it's hard to really have a quote unquote perfect slash impossible killing, which was the premise of this one. So yeah. And also there was a lot of, I think this one is the longest of the three, if I'm correct on that one. I think it is. And it felt a little bit like we could have got this down to 2 hours maybe. And there's a lot of characters in this one that don't end up playing a big impact. And I think, Rian Johnson making these movies, he wants to just get these star-studded casts. And once he has the cast, it speaks for itself. You have Glenn Close, you have Josh Brolin, you have Mila Kunis, Jeremy Renner, Kerry Washington. Like, all those names are crazy, but we need actual depth behind some characters. And I feel like, especially, well, I think in all three of the movies, really the main character has been the focus, while everyone else is just a side character that we like slowly learn about throughout the movie. And I thought Josh O'Connor did a good job as the main character. He was compelling enough. There were some, like, I don't know, I wasn't fully behind his character. He wasn't like one of my favorite characters in film history. He was interesting, and I think that's a good start to this. So yeah, I think if you were a fan of either of the first two Knives Out movies, you'd enjoy this one enough. And yeah, I'll leave you all at that for the non-spoiler sections as I get into my thoughts and reactions throughout the film. There will be spoilers ahead, so click off if you don't want to hear spoilers. We start this one out, as I always like to talk about the beginning of the movie, with a pretty long, like, I don't know if you want to divide this and say it's just the first act, but it's Judd, the priest played by Josh O'Connor, gets reassigned, and he's telling this backstory that probably lasts the span of 45 minutes, the first hour of the movie. And one of my big minus points for this one was Benoit's not in any of that. Like, it takes Benoit so long to show up in this movie. So minus him, he's kind of the essence of what you're. I mean, it's not like I'm sitting down and being like, well, it is. it's kind of like, yeah, I'm sitting down to watch Benoit Blanc, but I don't like, if there was some other random detective, it could be just as good, you know? But I don't know. I feel like they kind of waited too long to use him. And he's kind of forced into this one pretty late. That was one of the big drawbacks for me of this movie. But we get the story from Judd. He punched a pastor at the beginning, gets reassigned to a different church, and he kind of has this like back and forth war almost with the other priest who he's taking up fellowship. I don't know what it's called when you have another priest you're like looking at or being like a mentor. Like his mentor is supposed to be this Wicks character played by Josh Brolin, which two Josh Brolin movies reviewed in a row on the channel. I'm starting to become a fan of Josh Brolin outside of just knowing him as Thanos. As you know, I feel like most people just know him as Thanos. Anyways, there's a big rich history behind this church where there was a woman named Grace. She was the daughter of the priest, and he was able to find himself with a large fortune, and she was one of those nepo babies. I'm gonna say, I don't know if that's the correct term, but she was waiting on the fortune, waiting on the will to hit, and you know, he wasn't really willing to give that to her because that's all she was focused on. Obviously, he's more of like a ethical guy, being a priest, and now I think this has come up in the first and third movie. I don't think the wills situation comes out in the, maybe it does play. I just don't remember a lot about the second movie. But this is kind of a maybe an overall theme for all of the Knives Out movies of the wills and what people take from their people who have passed away, their family members. Grace sticks it out and waits for the fortune to hit once he passes away, and he passes away. She ain't getting that fortune, and he didn't write her in the will, obviously, and she can't find it. Like she tears up the church, doesn't know where it is, and just completely wreaks havoc in the church. So it's like a cursed kind of story of her ravaging this church after not being able to have her inheritance that she thinks she earns by just doing nothing. And I think she is also the mother of Wicks. So Wicks is able to become. That might not be true. I know Martha watched Grace, or Martha was a young child when Grace was older. There was a lot of complicated dynamics within this movie that makes it hard to follow at points too. So we get into the initial dynamics of Wicks and Judd. Obviously, Judd is this like up and coming priest who has a totally different mindset on what Wicks is preaching, because Wicks is kind of this old fashioned guy who's almost, he takes pride in kicking people out of each of his sermons. Like he wants to see at least one or two people come in and then leave. So to see him versus Judd was interesting, where Judd's like, I'm trying to like find the word for it more, trying to be involved and trying to get everyone involved, where Wicks has his like main crew of people, which happens to be like the whole cast of the movie that we're meant to be following. And it all comes to a head, or doesn't really come to anything, because Wicks is found dead in the side tunnel, and it's like slowly revealed through a bunch of details and what happened, which, I understand the slow playing of it, but it was like, first of all, we just find him dead in the corner, and then people are blaming Judd because he was the one to go pick him up, or go see that he was dead in the side, but like nobody was in the side, like little closet. It's a whole thing. Judd is suspect number one, and this will not be the first, or this will not be the only time he's a major suspect throughout the movie. But it's obviously, it's Knives Out. It's a little too obvious to say he's going to be the one. I did watch this movie with two friends, and all of our theories were wrong. So at least shout out to Ryan Johnson for throwing everyone off. I don't know if anyone could have predicted how this one really went down. Well, he's the number one suspect as well, because he stole a little devil head from a bar, and then he threw it into a field, and we just don't know where it goes. But that same one is replicated on Wicks's coat with a dagger. They pull out the dagger and has the little devil head. So people just assume it's him, and it goes viral and stuff, which, if it actually did go as viral as they were claiming it, I think life would be a lot worse for Judd than it was in this movie. But nonetheless, finally, our boy Benoit Blanc shows up to the church and is just immediately trusting of Judd. I don't know if like we're just meant to believe Benoit Blanc just has like a superhuman ability to find the good people and just know who the good people are. Obviously, he kind of believes in Ana de Armas, and he believes in that girl in the second one. Now he just believes in Judd inherently. It could be what if we had a Knives Out movie where they don't, people would be so mad if they don't find out what happens. I kind of thought we were heading that way for this one for a while, where just like a bunch of shit kept happening. No one really knew what was going on. But back to the point. I think, like I mentioned before, Blanc's appearance was super late, but he inherently trusts Judd just because Judd is a good guy, and we're meant to believe that Judd's a good guy because he's the main character we've been following along throughout it. Anyways, it's slowly revealed through some flashbacks the craziness of Wicks and his preaching. So he also was drinking at the time, and they're doing their investigative work, and this was like the run of scenes that just completely threw me for a loop. I had no idea what was going on. So we see Wicks appear to rise from the tomb. The tomb where all the priests are laid to rest is just this like big white building in the middle of a house in the church, and it appears like he kicked down the door. And it's so confusing. What's going on here? He's walking out of the tomb after being laid there, and then when they find that, they go to, or once they see that, Benoit Blanc heads to Nat's house, played by Jeremy Renner, and his body is found in an acid tub. So it's like we got a dead person in the tub, and we have a person who's meant to be dead walking out of a tombstone. And this was a point that we paused it and we're like, what the hell is going on? I was like, Wicks is still alive, trust, he's still alive. Was dead wrong on that one. I have to say my theories were pretty bad. I was doing the kind of just throw out every theory, and I still had nothing. I was doing a pretty bad job with that. So it slowly revealed through a couple of clues that Benoit, of course, just solves this shit because it's Benoit, and he waits for someone to step out and then step back in. It's Martha, and I haven't even talked about any of their characters. Really, none of them are worth mentioning. But Martha was this like church carekeeper and the one who's like the religious fanatic of one of the bigger followers of Wicks. He's got his crew. I don't even think anything like there's one of them is an influencer guy, which was funny. And I will say that this movie was actually funny at points. I feel like nowadays, maybe in my growing of age, I'm just finding things a lot funnier these days. But I thought that there were some funny moments throughout this movie, and I think throughout all of the Knives Out movies, they do have a little bit of comedy within them. So appreciated the funny moments in this one. But Sai is this like influencer kid who is the daughter or that's the son of Kerry Washington. She's a lawyer. Um, there's Jeremy Renner. He's a doctor. Mila Kunis is the sheriff. Glenn Close is Martha, the one I just mentioned, and then Andrew Scott is a writer, and Kaylee Spaney is I don't even know what she does. Those people are kind of just were irrelevant. I think we could have done without one or two of those characters, in my opinion. We find out through Martha's confession after she walks out of the church and walks back in. Benoit knew this would happen, but she announces what really went down. So the priest had actually swallowed the fortune, the pink diamond. She watched him swallow the fortune, which ended up just being this pink diamond. And then she ended up confessing to Wicks after all these years that she knew that he went to his grave with the fortune in his body. And that's actually how he dies, is swallowing this pink diamond, which is a crazy way to go out. Anyways, she tells Wicks in confession, and he was making a plan to go get it, as that was kind of a red herring of him wanting the tomb to be opened a couple weeks before. So it was like, oh shit, he was playing this whole resurrection thing. That's what I thought, was like he planned this and then he was just going to wake up from the dead, and it was a whole scheme on his part. Wrong again. Martha didn't like the idea of him opening up the tomb to go get the fortune, so she put a plan into place in order to kill him and get the fortune for herself to make sure that no one else got it. And she enlists Nat randomly, Jeremy Renner's character, one of the doctor, to do this. And interesting choice out of everyone to do it, but I wasn't suspicious on Jeremy Renner's character throughout a lot of this movie. The thing that happened was there was the devil head. They had the knife on it, and it was like a fake out. They attached it to the back of his cape, and then made him drink, or they knew he drank on the side thing when he had to take a break. So they poisoned his drink to make him go unconscious, and then had this like RFID chip to go off and spread a little bit of blood. So then when Judd goes to picks up the knife and has blood on it, they're like, oh shit. And they all look away for a second because Jeremy Renner's the doctor. He goes in, takes the real knife, and then stabs him for real. Crazy kill. Like, RFID, what are we doing? That was like, okay, y'all got it. And so that was the fake out. That was how the perfect crime happened. He wasn't actually dead when they found him initially. Jeremy Renner goes in for the kill. It all goes really everything goes well for Nat and Martha until Nat decides to get too greedy. Obviously, the whole one of the bigger themes of this movie is that people always want to go for the fortune. So Nat decides, I don't need to share this with Martha and her husband Samson, the groundskeeper. I want it for myself. So he kills Samson and makes it look like Judd did it, which I was even questioning whether Judd did it. I was like, no way he did this, because he wakes up with the knife in his hand and Judd's right there. I mean, Samson's right there. Just a really confusing third act of this movie, but it was good. It was overall it's good. It was a little bit hard to follow at times. So Nat had tried to poison Martha, but she cooked him with the classic switch the cups. So he actually poisoned himself. She puts him in the acid tub, and then before she goes to confess about the everything that happened, she actually poisoned herself. So she was on borrowed time. And like one of the bigger happy endings for Judd is that she tells him like, you were a good priest this whole time, and I should have been talking to you, not Wicks. Which, yeah, I agree. I think Judd was a much better priest, even though he low key killed somebody by punching them in boxing, which is crazy to say as well. As we wrap up here, it's kind of a year or two in the future. Judd, as this sort of new priest who has taken over the church, given it new life, new people coming into the church rather than the old group. And I don't know, I thought this kind of like crowning of Judd was really a little bit unwarranted throughout the movie, where it was like, oh, he was cool and we followed him along, but like, what great actions did he take to like become this great priest that we're supposed to be like, oh, you're like, he was fine, he was good. And the fortune, the pink diamond we see, is hidden in the crucifix that Grace had taken down in her ravaging of the church. So that pink diamond's still there, but no one will ever get it up in the rafters. With the crucifix, it's safe. With Judd, and then Blanc also knows about it, but doesn't say anything about it because it's none of his business. So overall, I thought this was a pretty compelling movie. I think it's another solid addition to the Knives Out series. Definitely kept me locked in through most of the movie. I think looking back on it, you could cut out a couple scenes here and there, and some of the stuff was hyped up a little bit, and some of the plot got a little bit unrealistic. But we're in 2025/2026. You got to do what you got to do to keep people entertained. So it was creative and compelling enough where I gave this a 7.7. Solid movie for Knives Out. Keep making these movies if you want. Make 17 of them. I don't care. I'll watch all of them. You know how we do here on the DubCast. Once I never quit anything. So where does this 7.7 relate to the other movies reviewed so far? This is our 94th movie review. And of those 94 movies, this comes in at number 49. This ties My Cousin Vinny, The Rip, The Guilty, Ballerina, Gladiator 2, and Extraction 2, all of those being 7.7s. You can kind of tell my type of movie there, but I'm taking this movie only over My Cousin Vinny of those because I love action thrillers. So there you go. On that, comparing this to some other movies I mentioned, Rian Johnson directed Looper. I gave that an 8.6. This is now the lowest ranked Rian Johnson movie on the channel. Just wait till the next Knives Out review drops. This also falls behind Dune 2, Dune, Sicario, American Gangster, but beats out True Grit. So this is the fourth or fifth of 6 Josh Brolin movies. Some good Josh Brolin movies we reviewed. This is out to Black Swan, which is an 8.5. Mila Kunis in both of those movies. This is out to Arrival, 9.6, and Wind River, 9.3. My two highest reviews both feature Jeremy Renner. So this is now the lowest ranked Jeremy Renner movie of those three. And this also loses out to Django Unchained, which is a 9.2, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is 7.9, Kerry Washington in both of those. And to wrap us up, loses out to 1917, 8.2, Andrew Scott. So unfortunately, this has become lower level on much of those actors and director parts of the comparison, but that's where we'll leave it on Wake Up Dead Man. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on Wake Up Dead Man. Where do you rank this in the big three Knives Out movie? Do you think we're getting 5 of these? Do you think we're getting 7 of these? Do you think we're getting 10? Or are we just going to make a Knives Out every year until Rian Johnson decides to stop? I don't know, but I'm down for any of them. And I think this is, so far, I got number 1 is number 1, number 3, this one is number 2, and then number 2 is number 3. So, aka Knives Out, Wake Up Dead Man, Glass Onion. That's my ranking so far of the 3. What's your ranking of the 3 if you've seen them all? If this was your first Knives Out, are you going to go back and watch the other 2? Let me know down below in the comments. What do you guys thought of this one? Up in the Dubcast, we got Survivor 50 content. I think I'm going to be posting this one after the first episode. So go check out what we did for the first episode of Survivor 50. We got Suits character tier list. That'll be coming out probably next video. Movie reviews, next one will be 2 for the Money. And yeah, it's the off season for a lot of sports right now. We'll pick it back up when basketball playoffs begin. But stay tuned for the DubCast. You never know what you might see and what you might enjoy. So as always, make sure to like, subscribe, dislike, comment, no unsubscribing. That's my one rule, okay? So I'll see you guys in the next one. Make sure to stay tuned to social media, everything. We're doing a lot of different content in 2026. This is our year, man. Get me to 100 subs. I'm at 97. Subscribe and then unsubscribe. Just let me feel that 100. All right, I'll leave you with that. And as always, be easy, y'all.